19 till the hour here on the Imus in the Morning program. Peter Kiernan wrote American Mojo, Lost and Found as his most recent book. He also wrote Becoming China's Bitch, which I believe was the first time that we talked to him. He's a successful businessman, venture philanthropist, corporate government advisor, does other stuff. Please welcome to the program, Peter Kiernan. Good morning, Mr. Kiernan.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
How are you?
I'm great, thanks. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I was trying to remember. Allie said, would you like to have Peter Kiernan on? I said, who? And then she told me. And I said, she said, you've had him on before. I said, did I like him? Mm-hmm. She said, yes. And I said, why? And I couldn't remember. So,
well, you know, it's a long list and time doesn't permit, but we did get along pretty well, yeah. It was fun last time.
So I'll start with Trump wanting to... not ban Muslims from his country forever, but apparently, the way I understand it, is not let them into the country until we can get our act together and decide how to determine what their motives and so on.
Well, I think it'd be just as effective to send them the ISIS a bunch of hoverboards for Christmas. I think he's damming the wrong river. It's just if you look at, just take an example, we've arrested 75 people. For conspiring with ISIS in the last 18 months. And if you just look at them, first of all, the vast majority of them, overwhelmingly, were long-lived American citizens. 40% of them were recent converts to Islam. You know, we're not looking at ISIS in the right way. It's totally different from, very, very different from Al-Qaeda, and we're using the same tools, which is never a good strategy.
What did you think... what did you think of the president's remarks the other night?
To be honest, I was baffled why he did it. About the only thing that I heard that was worthwhile was accelerating, but I don't think he has really looked at the nature of ISIS. It's totally different. You know, unlike the Al-Qaeda folks who are sort of, their leadership is hiding in the border on Afghan-Pakistan border, you look at what Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi is doing. He is creating an Islamic state. He is adding a new dimension to the zeal, which is not religious, it's not allegiance, it's homeland. Think of how we defend our homeland. Think of how countries like Israel defend their homeland. Suddenly, there is someone who wants to have an Islamic homeland and to attract, as they have, tens of thousands of disaffected youth to come to defend and honor themselves by fighting for a homeland. We have to change our strategy. We can bomb rock at a kingdom come. Frankly, typically, bombing terrorists doesn't really work. You know, you're dropping a $200,000 bomb on a $10,000 truck. But there is a way to beat ISIS, and I didn't hear any of it in the president's remarks.
Back to Trump for a second. What he says sounds unsavory, but is there any aspect of it? And I think the reason it resonates with so many people, whether that's good or bad, is irrelevant. But the fact that it does is because even though one of these murderers in San Bernardino was a citizen, they nevertheless were both Muslim. And so my question is, clumsy question, but does any aspect of taking a look at people who come into this country, a closer look at them, with more stringent visa policies and so on, make any sense?
Well, that's why I like coming on the show, because it's a thinking show. I'm going to spare you the outrage and the moral outrage, because there's plenty of that about the claim. It's very clear that we didn't sufficiently question the lady of the package, because she came in under a fiancé visa, which is kind of a peculiar construct on its own, without questioning her background or where she'd studied or even asked her about any of her. Now, whether she would have volunteered that, I don't know. But it's very clear that the visa piece of this that you identified needs to be thought through a little bit more carefully. I think where I get into trouble is when I start my day, I try not to, with my statements, annoy 1.5 billion people. I think that we're talking about a very, very tiny minority. And the issue has much more to do with disaffected youth. Too many of the people who we're arresting, who we're identifying, are recent converts. If you go to the area of Brussels where the Paris the folks who basically attacked Paris, the unemployment rate for youth there is over 60%. If you go to the Middle East and North Africa, the rate of unemployment among youth is well over 50%. And by the way, in the Middle East and North Africa, most people are under 20 years old. And so what we're creating is a fertile field for growing terrorism. And if you look at, if you compare the tapes that Al-Qaeda runs versus the tapes, if you go online and see what ISIS runs, Al-Qaeda looks like a bad porn film. It's basically shot with one camera, bad lighting, in Arabic. ISIS is super sophisticated, lots of cuts, lots of music, lots of English, lots of glorification. It's like a recruiting video. It's a true come join a cause video. I think the problem with what Donald Trump has said is that he is focused on the wrong issue. The issue isn't the Muslims at large.
And yet, as we discussed, he resonates with so many people. What happens if he gets elected?
Well, listen, I think leadership, particularly presidential leadership, does not take place on the hustings or the campaign trail. It takes place at 3 o'clock in the morning when the phone rings at the White House, and it's another foreign leader, or it's a leader inside your cabinet calling to say, we've got a problem. What I'd like to hear from Donald Trump is what he's going to do at that point. I think he's exceptional at capturing the anxiety and the attention of the American people. I've never seen anybody better. In the history of campaigning, he's a Hall of Famer. What I really would like to know about him as a leader is what are you going to do when that phone call comes at 4 a.m.? That, to me, is where his presidential aspirations are going to be lived out, and I'd really like to know what he plans to do then.
In America, we're talking with Peter Kernan, the author of American Mojo, Lost and Found. And what do we need to do to found it?
I'll tell you what we need to do to find it. Number one, I think we have to acknowledge that we're fighting a parallel war against ISIS. There's a central question we have to ask, and I didn't hear that in the president's speech. We have to fight in parallel with Iranian forces and Shiite militia. When we left Iraq, there were 250,000 soldiers in the army. Today there are 50,000. The gap has been filled by Shiite militias. Now we're sitting in this parallel war where we're bombing, Russia's bombing, and Iran is supplying a lot of manpower, weaponry, and tactics. The central question is, can we put aside our conflicts of interest with Russia and Iran and unite in some fashion to destroy ISIS? Because we can't do it alone. You can't bomb Iraq at a kingdom come. You need ground forces in Iraq, and we've got them. We're looking like a unicorn for the ground forces that we can marry with in Syria. We're looking for the mounted Syrian forces, and we just can't seem to find them. So we have to make ourselves more flexible in order to defeat the current enemy who's declared war on us. That's ISIS. If we do that, and we at the same time start to look for a way to provide a youth guarantee to all these disaffected youth, those are two short-term and long-term ways we can begin to fight this demon.
Makes a lot of sense. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Hanukkah, or whatever you celebrate.
All the above. Thank you so much, Imus. It's always a pleasure to be with you.
I now know why we had you on. You were good. We'll have you on again. Thanks, man.
Thank you very much.
Peter Kernan here at the Imus Morning Program.